Good evening. I'm Bernie Michael. I am the chairman of the board and president of the Center for Jewish History and president of the American Jewish Historical Society. On behalf of the center, AJHS, and our partners in tonight's event, Beit HaTfutzot and Yeshiva University, it is my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's program, Bucharest Diary, Romania's Journey from Darkness to Light. I'll say it's not every day here at the center that we are privy to a conversation between an ambassador and a senator. And it is our tremendous privilege to bring Ambassador Al Moses and Senator Joe Lieberman to our stage this evening. Both of them have not only witnessed history, but have actively guided and shaped pivotal moments in that history. It is particularly meaningful to us to have tonight's conversation here at the center. Bringing historical knowledge and context to today's critical conversations and preserving the past in order to better understand the present, those are central to our mission. The Center for Jewish History is a rare gem in this city, a world-renowned research institution for scholars of Jewish history, a destination for public programs, concerts, exhibitions, a place to explore genealogy, and most importantly, the center is home to one of the world's most extraordinary archival collections. Our 5 partner organizations here at the center, the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research, the American Jewish Historical Society, the Leo Beck Institute, the American Sephardi Federation, and Yeshiva University Museum together possess the largest repository of Jewish archival material outside of Israel. I think it's safe to say that most people walking by this unassuming building on West 16th Street have no idea that tucked away inside is an astonishing treasure trove of materials that span 1,000 years of history, include millions of documents, hundreds of thousands of books, thousands of artworks, ritual objects, recordings, sheet music, posters, and film. Not surprisingly, our archives hold stories relevant to tonight's program as well. For example, in the American Jewish Historical Archives, we have a letter of introduction that President Ulysses S. Grant wrote for Benjamin Pichetto, who was appointed to act as U.S. Consul General to Romania. I want to put this up on the screen for you. I know that's hard to read, but I'll be walking you through it in a minute. But this is a photocopy, obviously, of the original letter from General Grant. Let me give you, before we walk through it, let me give you some context. Let me tell you what you should know about it and why you should care about this particular letter. Benjamin Pichetto was born in 1834 into an old Sephardic Jewish family. And it was relatives with many of the other important, quote, Jewish founding families. In 1870, President Grant appoints Pichetto as American consul to Romania. Once at Bucharest, Pichetto presses vigorously for Jewish emancipation and also took the initiative in founding Jewish schools and cultural societies. He ultimately pressed for mass immigration to the United States of Romanian Jews. His well-publicized presence in Romania inhibited new anti-Semitic legislation and avoided or mitigated several pogroms. In other words, he went to Romania, saved Jewish lives, and he was able to at least get some of the Jews out of Romania at that time to freedom and safety in the U.S. So now that you have some context about who he was and what this is about, let me read the letter to you. So on the letterhead, as you can see, of the Executive Mansion, Washington, December 8, 1870. The bearer of this letter, the Honorable Benjamin F. Pichetto, who has accepted the important but unremunerative position of U.S. Consul General to Romania, is commended to the good offices of all representatives of this government abroad. Mr. Pichetto has undertaken the duties of his present office more as missionary work for the benefit of the people who are laboring under severe oppression than for any benefit to accrue to himself, a work in which all citizens wish him the greatest success. I'll show you the second page, which of course is not there, because life would be too easy. No, there it is. The second page. this is actually the important part when reading about Ulysses Grant. He writes here in his own handwriting, "The United States, knowing no distinction of her own citizens on account of religion or nativity, naturally believes in a civilization the world over which will secure the same universal liberal views." This is Grant writing to the government of Romania saying, please accept our ambassador. He's Jewish, he's here to help. We accept him as one of ours, we expect you to accept him as one of yours. The fascinating thing about this letter, one of the many fascinating things about this letter, is the direct line that we can draw from the persecution of Jews in Romania in the 1800s to modern times, and the direct line of the life and death accomplishments and benefits of Romanian Jews from Consul General Bucharest in the 1870s to our own Ambassador Moses in the last 2 decades. History repeats, and the study of history gives us a way to see modern achievements in light of the past. The Bucharest letter, Eddie, you could take care of the screen. The Bucharest letter is just one of millions of pieces of history contained in our archives. Best of all, these collections and the stories they tell are not meant to be hidden away. Our online collections are accessible to the public, as are our reading room, our library, and our genealogical institute. Our exhibitions, public programs, and conferences draw from and showcase the treasured stories in this building. So, on your way out today, please sign up for our mailing list. Please pick up flyers of our upcoming programs, which you're going to love. Become a member. Support us as best you can. Particularly today, thanks to an anonymous but very generous donor, every dollar that you'll pledge tonight, and if you come to me later, I'll be happy to take your pledges. Every dollar that you pledge will be matched by a matching grant. Most of all, we hope you'll come back here again and often. We will have a Q&A following the conversation, and please join us in the mezzanine after the conversation and after the program for a book signing by the ambassador, and also a reception. Thank you all. And now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you Shula Bahat, the CEO of our partner organization tonight, Beit HaTfutzot.
Good evening and welcome. What a great audience. If I would have the time, I would recognize, I think, every one of the 160 people who are in the audience, but I don't have the time because I don't want to take it from Senator Lieberman and Ambassador Moses. So, Bernie, thank you for introducing me. My title means basically that I am the Chief Representative of Beit HaTfutzot in North America. It means that I bring to this country and to other countries that are part of North America the exhibitions and the programs of Beit HaTfutzot, and I won't take the time to talk to you about that. I will only tell you that Beit HaTfutzot is more than a museum. It really is a center and a museum. And as such, I think, Bernie, and the leaders of this Center of Jewish History, I think we are a match made in heaven. And for reasons that we're not going to describe here, for other reasons. I want to thank the Center for hosting us tonight. I want to thank the Center for hosting us tonight, and want to tell you that we at Beit HaTfutzot believe in partnership. We believe that the organizations and the entities, business and otherwise, that remain in the future, survive in the future, are those who partner with other organizations. And I was delighted that one of the guests here actually reinforced the point of view of mine. So this is not the first time that we are partnering with the Center of Jewish History. A couple of years ago, we brought here an amazing exhibition called Light and Shadows, the story of the Iranian Jews. We brought another program last year about Israel-diaspora relations, and so on and so forth, and we will continue to do so. I just want to mention to you that Beit HaTfutzot, as I said, is a center and museum of the Jewish people in Israel. Is going through a renewal now. And in May 2020, we will open the new core exhibition of Better Thought, which will tell the entire story of the Jewish people from the beginning and into the future. And into the future through challenging ourselves to listen, to look, and to review the challenges that are facing the Jewish community. So it is becoming really, as Alfred Moses says, the center of Am Israel. And it is, by the way, so anchored in the law of Israel. It is described in the law of Israel, probably one of the most, maybe the only unanimous law of Israel, is that it is the national center of Jewish communities in Israel and abroad. We basically celebrate Jewish life. We celebrate it without hiding the lights and the shadows, especially in Jewish life. But we are there to celebrate and to tell the narrative of the Jewish people, and people that live among other people more than any other people. And as a result, I believe, we have a universal resonance. And it's not only Jews, it is for people of all backgrounds who come to Better Futsal and to our programs here in order to learn about this fascinating narrative of an organization, entity, people that basically survived the shadows and took advantage of the lights. As I mentioned earlier, the Better Futsal is undergoing through renewal, and then our new core exhibition will open in May 2020. But meanwhile, we have a new wing which is functioning and can occupy those of you who are planning to come to Israel for at least 3 hours, if not more. And all you have to do when you come to Better Futsal is say, Shula sent me, and the door will be open. Now, just a few words about Senator Lieberman and Ambassador Moses, who actually do not need introduction. A couple of years ago, at the residence of the President of Israel, who was at the time Chaim Herzog, the person who introduced him began to say where he went to elementary school and high school, etc. And those of you who knew Chaim Herzog knew that he had no patience with that kind of introduction. So he got up and he said, it's enough to say that that was the President of Israel. So it's enough to say that the senator is a senator and the ambassador is an ambassador. But I do want to highlight something that is very important to us, and that is both of you assume important roles within Better Futsal, and I don't think that it is by chance, it is by design. You, Senator Lieberman, you are the honorary chair of the Board of Governors of Better Futsal, and Alfred Moses is the co-chair of our International Board of Governors. But for us, you really exemplify the American, Jewish, and global identity. It is woven within you, and I believe that you are, both of you are really models for the generations to come. The ability to really weave the multi-identities that are that you exemplify. So it is really a wonderful and a privilege for us to have you here tonight. I think this is a unique opportunity for us to hear your perspective of history, your perspective on this value of Kol Israel Arevim Ze Leze, because that's really what Alfred Moses' book is really all about. And without further ado, I would like to call you to come to the stage. And while you're doing it, I want to tell those of you who read the program that one thing that is not in the program is that the question and answer period will be moderated by the other partner in this program, Yeshiva University, and the president of Yeshiva University, Dr. Rabbi Ari Berman, is here with us, and we will call upon you later on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me say at the outset, if I may, it's wonderful to see so many friends of Joe Lieberman.
When you took the mic and began to speak, I thought this will be a very easy conversation for me. That's very gracious of you. This room is full of a few friends of mine, but really your friends who are proud of you, proud to know you. As in the interest of full disclosure, am I. This will not be, incidentally, Shula spilled the beans. I thought that empty chair was for Elijah the prophet. And, but it's really for the closest thing we could find to Eliyahu, Rabbi Ari Berman, the president of Yeshiva University.
President of Yeshiva University, Rabbi Ari Berman, you should be up there.
He's coming after a while. So, full disclosure, I have known Ambassador Al Moses for quite a long time. I admire him greatly. I even like him, you know, and therefore
He endorsed me to be ambassador. I wouldn't have the job without Joe.
Right. So our friendship actually began not in the world of law, in which Al has had such a distinguished and successful career, not really in the world of diplomacy, in which he accomplished so very much, but in our synagogue in Georgetown, where we met, we prayed together, we schmoozed a little bit together about Torah and occasionally about politics, I must admit. And we shared either at the appropriate time during the service or after a good shot of scotch. And from such shared experiences, really deep friendships develop. So this will be a conversation and not an interrogation. Let me first say to Al, congratulations on publishing the Bucharest Diaries. I once read by a well-known author, and frankly I've forgotten who it was, who said that I do not enjoy writing. I enjoy having written. So writing
So
is
true.
right. So writing is a labor, and this book shows your work and your thoughtfulness, your standards of excellence, which we all associate with you. But really, it's a wonderful repository, in the most immediate sense, frankly, for your family and those who follow you, to know that you did what you did and really didn't only write history, but made it. But secondly, it has very broad lessons to teach to a large audience about, in the most fundamental sense, the extraordinary difference that one gifted person who cares can make in the world, and about the skill of a diplomat. Incidentally, it's also an argument for occasionally during my time in the Senate, when a president would nominate a non-foreign service officer to be an ambassador, there would be howls. He's political. Of course, I found out in this book, maybe in one of the introductions, Al was appointed ambassador to Romania by President Clinton. Shockingly, never even contributed a cent to President Clinton. So it was a merit appointment by far. Anyway, let's talk about the book, because I could go on about Al personally for a long time. So this is a Bucharest Diary. So it's not a memoir in that sense. But I want to start with your permission about your life, because what emerges, the person that I am privileged to know, and in this book, is a very impressively accomplished, devoted person with high standards, great accomplishments. So I'm interested for a couple of moments. You talk about your childhood, and what were the influences on you within your family, perhaps from teachers, that put you on the path that you can look back on now with such pride?
Well, thank you, Joe. Let me just comment, if you'll permit me. The Senator and I He was a senator, you know, for 24 years, a remarkable career. Before that was Attorney General of the state of Connecticut. Very distinguished alumnus of Yale University and Law School, editor of the Law Review. I think he was the editor of the, whatever it was called, Yale Daily News. Is that close to right?
That's what it was called. Right?
Yeah. Bill Clinton told me he campaigned for you when he was in law school. Is that right?
He did.
Yeah.
I was an upstart running against the Democratic organization.
And you won.
And I won, but not too much.
Well, one vote's enough. We know. Sometimes you get 3 million votes less than the other person, you still win.
I've heard that.
So be it.
Hard to believe.
Thank God for those illegal immigrants. In any event, Joe, let me just comment on a serious note. Joe and I, she said, we're members of a fairly small Orthodox synagogue, modern Orthodox synagogue in Georgetown, where, as you know, the Orthodox service is 3.5 hours, time unimportant. You go all Shabbat. One of our fellow congregants was Herman Wolk, who just died last Friday. I just want to mention that. Some of you may say the Kaddish for him. I'll be delighted if you do. Tomorrow here tonight, we'll do the Kaddish for Herman. He was a faithful, inspiring member of our synagogue, a wonderful human being, a wonderful person, and a very devoted, learned Jew. Quite a remarkable person. I don't think any of us, even someone as distinguished as Joe, captured the American public's attention and respect as an active Jew to the same extent as Herman did. So
It's true.
it's with great respect and even affection that we remember Herman.
No, not at all. Thank you. I couldn't agree more. So, to the extent you want, tell us about the influences in your childhood.
I was trying to get away from the question. I filibuster.
That was
Something you never do.
That was a great legal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't
okay.
have to answer if you don't want.
Well, I've thought about it, Joe, and I don't know the explanation. I have grandchildren here. I have children here. I have friends here. One great friend, Jerry Hose, who grew up with me in Baltimore, and a cousin, Ruthie Gottesman. We were all quite close in Baltimore. I can't tell you. My family was observant. We were Shomer Shabbat. We had a kosher home. My father was quite strict. My mother knew nothing about Judaism whatsoever. And my father would recite Berachat HaMazon, the prayers, after the meal. And he would do it in a rapid fashion. Hebrew, being in the army in World War I. So like a machine gun, he said the Berachat HaMazon, and I would take my finger and move along the page so my mother knew where it was. I was enthralled by the Chazan in our synagogue. I'm still getting the Hampton Synagogue here to do his melodies as part of the service. I was always religiously inclined. My sisters and cousins were not. Okay. It may have been a sex thing. The women sat upstairs, the men sat downstairs. I felt included, they felt excluded. I really can't tell you. I went to secular college, Dartmouth, I went to secular graduate school, Princeton, I went to a Catholic law school in Georgetown. I always remained an observant Jew. Maybe it's stubbornness, I just don't know, but it always interests me. The Jewish people always interested me. I've gone around the world almost all of my life trying to help endangered Jewish communities, and that's how I became United States Ambassador to Romania. If you see a certain illogic in all of that, it is. But my life has not proceeded according to logic, it's proceeded according to instinct. The great genes I inherited from my parents and the wonderful examples that they set for me. I should also say, because I've become more conscious of this, my great-grandfather came to this country in 1866 as an uneducated but talented individual. He started a hat factory. Gottesman's father was principal in that factory. It became the largest manufacturer of men's straw hats in the world. And he was an observant Jew, and he gave of himself and of his means. At one time, he was a leading Jewish philanthropist in Baltimore. That was over 100 years ago. So you might say it's in my blood, but I have no idea really what's in my blood. It's just the way I've lived my life. I never thought about it. I just acted on my instincts. Maybe, Joe, you're much smarter about the things than I. I've just been living up to my parents' expectations, but who knows?
That's a great beginning. Thanks for that, Al. So I would say that in some sense there are three different parts to the story you tell in Bucharest Diary, and I'd like to talk about each of them. The first, which is really an extraordinary, thrilling part, I want to ask you to talk about it, which is we went to Bucharest when you were the leader of the American Jewish Committee, or at least coming to the leadership. And just talk a little bit about, first, the role of the American Jewish Committee internationally, because I know you traveled a lot on their behalf. But then, how did you get seized by the status of the Jews of Romania?
Again, Joe, I don't know, it just happened. We were in Jerusalem, the Board of Governors of the American Jewish Committee, maybe 90 people. There were three destinations from Jerusalem: Madrid, Berlin, or Bucharest. I chose Bucharest. Certainly not the favorite. So we had the smallest group. I ended up in Bucharest, arriving in the middle of the night. Very difficult. Communist Romania, Nicolae Ceausescu, very harsh, very dimly lit, smog everywhere, nobody very friendly, nobody thinking well of Jews. I knew I was in a hostile land. Why Bucharest? Well, it fascinated me because I knew nothing about it. And you go behind the Iron Curtain. I've been to Czechoslovakia in 1962, but this was different. This was Romania. The next day we visited the synagogue. The chief rabbi, Moses Rosen, was in Switzerland, a marvelous individual, charismatic leader. We could talk all night about Moses Rosen. He was not there, but his minions were there. They extolled the rabbi in absentia and all the great things the community was doing to continue to perpetuate and indeed enrich Jewish life. It was all nonsense at Potemkin Village. It was all American Jewish money and a little bit of leadership of the chief rabbi, but it wasn't for real. I then went back to my hotel, the Athene Palace, with my wife. We came out of the hotel, and three young men approached me, and they said, "Are you American?" And I said proudly, "Yes." They said, "Are you Jewish?" I said proudly, "Yes." And then it all flowed. Life for Jews here is terrible. We're blamed for everything. We've been thrown out of work. We have no future. You got to help us get out. So I became hooked. I spent the next 13 years getting Jews out of Romania.
So how did you do it?
Well, I had help from people like you. I had the administration, President Carter, his National Security Advisor, Brzezinski, was very helpful. President Reagan was very helpful. President Bush was very helpful. Skokov, his National Security Advisor, was helpful. The Senate was helpful. Joe, you weren't even there then. This was in the 70s.
Tail end.
Yeah, Alex Stevenson III was there. We had support on both sides of the aisle. And I went over and did bare knuckle negotiating with Nicolae Ceausescu, which was an enormous joy. He was about as uninteresting a character as you can meet, but he controlled Romania, not in part, but wholly. I don't think there's anybody on the face of the earth today who has the same control over a country that Nicolae Ceausescu had over Romania. It was simply dreadful. The next 13 years, my mission was to get Jews out, to go to Israel. As the chief rabbi used to tell me, Mr. Moses, he was always very formal, our Jews go to Israel. They don't go to Philadelphia. And so it was. And they went to Israel. They went to Israel, Joe, because they could go to Israel under the law of return. To get to the United States is a hassle, as you know. So we opened the floodgates. The second largest Jewish community in Eastern Europe, and they flowed into Israel. Before the Moroccan emigration, the Romanian Jews were the largest number of immigrants into Israel after the creation of the state of Israel, 400,000.
So Al, what was the incentive? You described this in the book for Ceausescu. Was it money? Was it MFN? If it was,
It was MFN, most favored nation tariff.
yeah, it'd be interesting, I think, to talk about that a moment, because that kind of leverage from the U.S. matters, and it mattered here.
It mattered enormously. Romania was desperate for foreign currency, hard currency. They could not export goods to the United States unless they had most favored nation tariff status, which many countries in the world had, all the Western countries had. we persuaded the Senate, which is where the battle was, each year to renew MFN from Romania. In return, we got commitments from Ceausescu to let the Jews out, to respect human rights more or less within Romania. Now I got the Jews out, we got the Baptist Bible into Romania. I got two Christian clergymen out of jail. One of them later ended up in Northern Virginia, Father Kaushu. And I was nominated to be ambassador to Romania. He opposed my nomination, sent a letter to your good friend, Senator Helms, but had two strokes of good luck. Number one, Senator Helms didn't read the letter. Number two, it didn't arrive till after I'd been confirmed. But there's a moral to the story. No good deed goes unpunished. So it was an interesting time. We were able to get Jews out of Romania, get the Baptist Bible into Romania, get Christian clergymen out of Romania because of the strong leadership that came to the United States. It was American foreign policy at its best. Folks, we don't do that no more.
Yeah. So that was, the numbers were in the thousands. Did you ever try to estimate?
No, I didn't, because I didn't want to count. You know,
Yeah.
we're told you can't count Jews. They got out. I don't think there was any Jew when I was head of my own company. I was the self-appointed director of it. There was no Jew in Romania that didn't get out. I would get a list every month from the chief rabbi of who applied. And if they didn't get out within a period of weeks, certainly months, I would jump on it. So I think I can say, Joe, your question is absolutely right. I can't count them because we can't count. But any Jew who wanted to go, they wanted to go in the thousands, we got them out.
Yeah.
When I say we, it wasn't just I. We had the Emigrate, the Jewish Committee, the Federation of Jewish Philanthropy, we had the Conference of Presidents, Morris Abram, Ted Mann. The Jewish community was wonderful on this, very active, very proud. So although getting Jews out of the Soviet Union was the big story, we were an important sub-story.
Well, from everything I know, there were a lot of people working together on this, but you started it. You were the first light. And
Well, everybody has to have a self-appointed leader. It's like Boy
yeah,
Scouts.
so you were it. So your last name Moses could be used as your first name, because honestly, you became a liberator.
Well, it was an honor and a privilege.
Yeah. And if I were one of those Baptist ministers you freed, I would say, Ambassador, you were doing the Lord's work.
I suppose so. I never thought it was the Lord's work. I thought it was my work. I thought it was my obligation.
Maybe even a
If
lawyer.
the Lord was on my side, I'd welcome him.
All right. So there were stories that always have come along about money being paid to Ceausescu to let cash to let Jews go. Yes or no in your experience?
I only know what I read in Eden's book. Is at the Holocaust Museum. Radu wrote, and I'm sure he's right, that Israel paid $2,000 a head to get Jews out.
Right.
Helmut Kohl told me he paid $10,000 a head to get Germans out. I never thought the Germans were 5 times better than the Jews, but I think Kohl had more money. I suppose that's true, but no one ever told me that. I had horrendous experiences with the Israelis. I'll tell you just one story, because many of you will relate to this. I received a call in my office from Elie Rubinstein, who was vice president of the Supreme Court of Israel later. He was then the charge, the ambassador Meir then was in the hospital. A wonderful friend, Orthodox Jew, calls me. I get the call, Mr. Moses. He never called me Mr. Moses in his life. I knew I was in trouble. Mr. Moses, I have a message to read to you from my government. The message went something like this. Mr. Moses, we know you're very active in trying to save the great synagogue in Bucharest that is slated for destruction by Nicolae Ceausescu. Please be advised that the government of Israel has a special relationship with the government of Romania. And please keep that in your mind when you're dealing with the government of Romania. Okay? The Jewish state is telling me to ease up and stay in the great synagogue. I said, Elie, I have a message for your government. He said, what is it? I said, Elie, I'm going to do everything I can to save the great synagogue. Elie said, I delivered the message of my government. I'll now give you my personal message. I agree.
Good for you. So the second sort of large chapter, if you will, after really this heroic story of Jews being liberated, was the post-Ceausescu period, during which you were ambassador, not right away, but pretty soon after. By a twist of fate, you and I talked about this years ago, I was asked to chair an international delegation to observe and monitor the first elections after Ceausescu. It was really a remarkable experience. And one of the most memorable parts of it was that I got to meet Rabbi Rosen. So I want to make a transition on the Jewish side of this first. He said something I'll never forget. I asked him, how do you feel now that the country has been freed from the dictator? And he said, I'm paraphrasing, of course, in many ways this is wonderful, but I am worried in other ways. I always knew that Ceausescu was an anti-Semite, a terrible anti-Semite, but he had all the power. And if I and others, like you all, could convince him to do something good for the Jews, it would be done. He said, now I fear I will have to deal with millions of Romanian citizens who may well themselves be anti-Semites. So how do you react to that? I guess I'd ask that I know the number of Jews left post-Ceausescu was much smaller, thanks to you in large part. But what was the status of the Jews in Romania after Ceausescu?
Joe, the number that was left by the time I became ambassador, which was 94, was very small, about 10,000. Mainly elderly. Some would visit Israel regularly. I had a great friend, Dan Mizrahi, who was a George Gershwin fan, wonderful pianist. He's come to my residence on Friday night. I don't even play the piano on Friday night, but we did. I said, Dad, why don't you go to Israel? He said, I always dreamt of going to Israel, but I'm too old now to go. The community was old, somewhat ossified, and lost its spirit. The chief rabbi was gone, and he was the nerve center of the community. They weren't oppressed. Was it equal opportunity? I don't think so. Anti-Semitism is very deep in Romanian culture. Lots of things are deep in Romanian culture. The Romanians have always been, in their views, the victims, never the perpetrators. They think they have only two friends, what used to be Serbia and the Black Sea. They have a paranoid view of history, not unlike the Jewish people. Perhaps deservedly, they've been overrun by the Turks, the Romans, the Turks, the Russians, the Austro-Hungarians, the Germans. They haven't had a happy life experience. They feel looked down upon by most of Europe, and they're justified in having that feeling. I heard it from Eastern Europeans. The Poles look down on the Romanians. I heard that many times from Brzezinski and others. Life was different. They weren't oppressed, but I wouldn't call it a happy time for Jews. It's not a happy time now when I go back. I go to the great synagogue, which we saved and restored. There's a daily minyan, but it's not a happy community. And Jews have pretty much exited. There are very few upperly mobile Romanian Jews living in Romania today.
So let's talk about your time as ambassador. And I'm fascinated, maybe others will be, it's in the book, about how did President Clinton come to ask you to be America's ambassador to Romania?
Well, I just figured that out recently. It wasn't based on merit at all. I had a very good friend, Mark Grossman, who later became Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, the highest career position in the department, succeeded Dick Holbrooke as President Obama's special presidential representative for Pakistan and Afghanistan. He had worked for me in the Carter White House, and he was young and impressionable. I was older. He was maybe a bit intimidated. He went back to the department. He knew I was active in Romanian affairs. He became the executive secretary of the department. And he's an enormously skillful person. And he worked the machinery at the department So I became the Department of State's nominee to be ambassador, a non-career foreign service officer. It was all Mark. He then flipped over to the White House. He clued me in. He said, get to work. He knows people who can help you. I called President Carter. He called President Clinton. Wayne Kirkland was head of AFL-CIO. Clinton administration was trying to make it up with AFL-CIO after the NAFTA disagreements. I went over to see Lane. He was a great friend. His wife was Jewish, his second wife. She's actually been in Auschwitz. But any event, I walked into Lane's office and, Al, wonderful to see you. You're going to be the ambassador. It's the best thing those bastards in the White House ever did. And then he sort of jumped to the White House a bit. You wrote a letter for me. Senator Simon wrote a letter for me. I didn't even know Senator Simon, but his legislative assistant had been in the State Department. We'd worked together on Romanian matters. He wrote a letter for Senator Simon. It's a great letter. He said, Dear President Clinton, I've been to Bucharest and I've been to Romania. And if Alfred Moses wants to go there as ambassador, please send him. And you wrote a letter for me.
Yeah, you're very kind to have mentioned that I supported
No,
you.
you did. No,
One never knows how one is going to gain
Yeah,
immortality, you know.
It was a totally meritless appointment and confirmation.
Quite the contrary, as your
I was
service.
unanimously confirmed by the Senate at midnight because nobody was awake.
I don't think so. It was a knowing, fully awake vote. So this story, as somebody, either Bernie or Sheila said, is a story from darkness to light. And at a time when we've seen autocrats thrown over in some places, and what follows is chaos, and then often a dictatorship. This is not a perfect story, but it ends better. So tell us about the Romania you found when you arrived as ambassador, and some of the work you did to try to both strengthen U.S.-Romanian relations, but also to help this former communist dictatorship emerge into something resembling a thriving economy and even a democracy.
Joe, if my mother were living, I would have thought that she would have written that question for you.
She, we correspond long distance, and she did feed the question to me.
Well, she may be proud of me. Now, I'll tell you another story about that, just a second. I spoke at a large American Jewish Committee dinner before I went over as ambassador. And I started out by saying I'd been appointed ambassador, and of course the first person I spoke with was my mother. And I said, Mother, I've got good news for you. I've been nominated by President Clinton to be ambassador to Romania. There was a pause on the other end of the line. And then, Romania? Why Romania? Why not France? Your father and I always loved to go to Paris. Okay. And then the clincher. What has Mrs. Pamela Harriman ever done that's so great? My mother was 92. I said, Mother, I'm not going to tell you. She said, I think I know.
All right.
So let me just
strike my laughter from the transcript.
I will. Listen, the last line, I told the audience what I knew and my mother didn't know was on evenings such as this, Mrs. Harriman couldn't invite you to visit her in Paris because you would. But I could invite you to visit me in Bucharest because you won't. So there were some advantages, my mother notwithstanding. Things were bad in Romania. It was at the bottom of the list of countries in Eastern Europe. It was looked down upon not only by its neighbors, but also in the United States. The overthrow of Ceausescu was not a very clean operation. It was the only violent overthrow of a communist regime in Eastern Europe. Ceausescu was shot. Those who succeeded to the leadership had been active in the Communist Party, in the communist leadership, including Ion Iliescu, Ceausescu's successor as president. Nevertheless, they were quite pro-Western. For them, the Holy Grail was to get into NATO. I used the Holy Grail as an objective for them to attain, get into NATO. And if you want to get into NATO, here's what you've got to do. Build your democratic institutions, privatize your economy, build an independent judiciary, free up those who are oppressed. In other words, be part of the West. If it's NATO bubbies, I didn't call them bullies, but if it's NATO, fellow Romanians, these are the things you have to do. A large shootout with President Iliescu after I'd been ambassador all of 2 months. I was going to hand down a paper. Dick Holbrook was my boss, this is the Secretary of State. You've only been ambassador 2 months, Al. That's a little bit of chutzpah. Chutzpah was a word that Dick Holbrook could have invented, but nevertheless he cautioned me to be somewhat more modest in my expectations. I showed over President Iliescu. I laid down 6 points for him to accomplish if he wanted to become part of the West. He was really not indignant, he was mad. His face turned red, he sort of lost control, his eyes got watery. He put his finger on my chest and said, "Ambassador, not even Brezhnev spoke to us the way you're speaking to me." I had the presence of a wide to say, "I hope, Mr. President, I'm a better friend of Romania than Brezhnev was." And he sort of thought that was right. And he did all the things laid down, except they didn't privatize the economy. They lost the election in '96. But the new government came in, moved ahead more rapidly, still not rapidly enough. So by the time President Clinton came to Romania in July 1997, he could announce that we have a new Romania, and that if you stay on the course of democracy, we will take you by the hand and lead you into NATO. And I'm proud to announce that I'm establishing with the government of Romania a strategic partnership between the United States and Romania. That was almost the holy grail for Romania. It did get into NATO. NATO became the means by which we were able to persuade the Romanians to do the things they needed to do in their own best interest. Good friends like Mark Meyer, head of the American Chamber of Commerce, had total support in Washington, not only from you, Joe, but both sides of the aisle.
Right.
Even Senator Helms, total support in the department, total support in the White House. I should mention Sandy Berger, who's National Security Advisor, was simply magnificent. He backed me up on every initiative, including the strategic partnership. So I had a lot of help from very good people, and I, being already in my late 60s, having a good job back in Washington, so I took the attitude, if you don't like what I'm doing, call me back. I didn't want this job, no how, sort of thing. But they never called me back. They let me do it. As long as I was succeeding in the Romanian government, didn't complain. I could be outrageous. I don't urge any ambassador to do what I did, or even attempt to do it. But it was a unique time. Romania needed us. And I was able, I think, to help Romania, as I say in the conclusion of my book. I was not just a witness to history, but for a brief moment in a faraway country, I helped to make it. I hope that's true.
Yeah, that is definitely true, and I know it to be true, but anybody who reads the book will see that it's true. That's a wonderful answer, and a very important and instructive answer you just gave, Al, and I particularly appreciate the emphasis you put, and the Romanians put, on joining NATO. Particularly now when I think people not only take NATO for granted, they here in Washington deride it a bit, and our alliance with our European allies. So just take a moment, and so you've given 2 examples of the way you motivated first Ceausescu to free the Jews. That was most favored nation status, trade agreement, just like the conflict going on with China now, but not quite.
Joe, we need you back in Washington.
Right. This Seth, no thanks. Did you see Hadassah just began to rise from her chair?
You too, Hadassah.
Right. The second, it was NATO. So why was joining NATO so important to post-Ceausescu Romania, that you could get Iliescu, the president, and the Romanian government to change as much as they did to get into NATO?
For Romania, NATO was the housekeeping seal of approval. The Romanians thought if they could get into NATO, they would have the support of the United States, and they'd no longer be subject to the wiles of European politics. After all, they've been invaded twice by the Germans, invaded by the Austrians, invaded by the Russians. One thing all Romanians will agree upon is their hatred for the Russians. They consider the Russians the guests will come for dinner and never leave. If the United States, which is leading NATO, could bring Romania into a transatlantic defense agreement for Romania, that meant that their future was assured. They'd no longer be the stepchild, they'd no longer be Cinderella in the basement. They would be part of Western world, the free democratic society that they truly longed for. It was the Holy Grail. One short story. A month or two before I left Romania, I went to northern Romania, Bucharest, to see the painted churches. And I stayed in a monastery. The head of the monastery, the brother, was a wonderful friend. My sister was with me. The next morning we left, and he came to say goodbye to me, my sister and her group. He kissed me on both cheeks, and then offered a prayer for universal peace in NATO. Even the prelates in Romania, including the head of the Romanian church, Theocris, all prayed for and prayed on me, different words, different spelling. NATO, NATO, NATO. It became the chant. I wrote a little doggerel about the NATO chant in Romania. They wanted to be in NATO. That meant they would no longer be second fiddle to the Hungarians, the Poles, the French, German, English, etc. It meant everything to them: self-respect, national identity, acceptance. I played on a little bit unfairly, I suppose, Joe, but they got into NATO. As I said, the administration, the Congress, and the American public supported me on that. As a result, we have a happy answer. The future is more cloudy. I don't see a coherent U.S. strategy. I just read Dean Atkinson's biography. It's clear what his strategy was. He was a master at putting together the strategy. I have no idea what the strategy is today. Maybe you can explain it, but I think we've lost our way.
No, it would take another whole evening to try it. But thanks, and look, there are a lot of lessons in what you've just said, and a lot of lessons throughout the book. And one is the importance of our alliances, and the importance of our alliances to advance our values, which makes the world safer for us. So just before I ask Rabbi Berman to come up, talk about how you see Romania today, because I know you keep in touch, not as much obviously as when you were an ambassador, but how's Romania doing today?
Well, let me answer that, Mark. If you disagree, you can speak up. Romania has never been one shade only. It has enormous problems of corruption, endemic corruption. It has problems with its health system, its transportation system. It doesn't have the greatest self-assurance. Its values are largely borrowed values. It's not a self-confident country. It's not really even a happy country. On the other hand, from my standpoint, it's a cousin. All of us are cousins, one to the other. So I want a better Romania. I want a better Romania for Romanian people. I want a better Romania for Europe. A better Romania for the world. It's not a black and white story. In my book, we talk about bringing Romania from darkness to light. I think we did. But the light is still not as bright or shining as strongly as I and other friends of Romania would like. There are those here who know Romania very well, including the consular, the cultural attaché. So if any of you will take exception to what I said, please feel free to tell me about it when we come to the question period. I'd be glad to respond and perhaps clarify what I've said.
That's great. There's more work to be done, and anyone in the U.S. government or elsewhere who wants to do it in Romania and throughout the former Soviet Union would do well to begin their preparation by reading your Bucharest.
Well, you're very kind. Joe, let me say two things.
No, it's absolutely the truth, because you helped to bring about change, and the change has to continue, particularly in the face of Putin's aggression.
No question. Joe, two things. Number one, you've been a great friend. You were a marvelous United States Senator. marvelous human being. Also, you mentioned anyone who wants to work on foreign policy. I dedicate my book to the men and women of the Foreign Service. I floated in. I was a successful lawyer in Washington, the White House. I had a happy family. For me, it was a treat. Go to Romania for 3 years. They treat you like the British Raj. They call you Your Excellency. And you go back home. It's fine. But it's the men and women of the Foreign Service who carry on the task of our foreign policy day in, day out. Herman Wolfe, in his book, Cane Mutiny, he has his hero, Greenblatt, what's the lawyer's name? Greenberg. Say that. Herman was a reserve officer. I was a reserve officer in the Navy, too. It's the regular Navy officers who man the ships during wartime and peacetime. They're the ones that we have an obligation to, the men and women of the armed services, the men and women of the Foreign Service. The firemen, the street cleaners, the policemen, the rest of us all live on their backs. We're never appreciative enough. So I thank you for your public service and your friendship, and all those people who labor for us day in and day out to make our country great, make our lives as wonderful as they are.
Amen. Okay.
Don't forget the public school teachers. They might be the most important.
True. So I think Bernie said there were 5 constituent groups within the Center for Jewish History. One of them is the Yeshiva University Museum. I particularly like to point that out because its director, Jacob Weiss, is our son-in-law. High above all that is the president of Yeshiva University, who I'm honored to ask to join Ambassador Moses and me, and that is Rabbi Dr. Ari Berman.
Okay, thank you so much, Senator. It is wonderful to be here with you this evening, this very special evening, surrounded by 2 extraordinary men. We're going to open this up to questions. Let me take the prerogative of the moderator to start with a question of my own, which is very much on my mind. You know, I am the head of an institution that believes that we must bring our Jewish values out into the world. That our goal is to educate our thousands of students to be the Jewish leaders of tomorrow, to think of themselves as people of impact, not just in their own community, but in the broader society. Tonight, we have in front of us 2 primary exemplars of this ideal. 2 men who have dedicated their lives to their own Jewish values and to bringing them out into this world. And I just mentioned, because Al mentioned before, that Herman Wolfe was a professor at Yeshiva University. And his students who studied English from him learned these values and learned how to live their lives. And he certainly represented for us this example of this ideal. So my question to you, gentlemen, you know, we've been speaking so much about history, but this isn't just about history. It's about destiny. And how do we teach the next generation to follow your lead? How do we teach the next generation that they should be thinking beyond themselves when they dedicate their years and their lives to improving not just the Jewish community, but society at large?
No, I yield to Ambassador. This is, you are the star. I'm just an interrogator. Please.
Any place you are, Joe, you're the star. So why don't you answer Ari's question then? If I have anything to add, which I probably won't.
Okay, I will say that I was quite struck with Al Moses' answer to my impertinent question about what were the influences in his childhood that created this extraordinary, first, exemplar is a great word, of Jewish values, but excuse me, let me jump ahead. This extraordinary citizen of America. And his answer was to say that he had grown up in a religiously observant Jewish home. And the second was that he wondered whether a lot of what he did was to please his parents. So two really great motivators. And I think it wasn't just the sort of rituals of observance, but he obviously learned the values of, we're here to make a difference. All the great stories in the Torah which show that we hope God inspires us. This is summarized beautifully by my original hero in politics, President Kennedy, when he said at the end of the inaugural address, we ask for God's blessings but we know on our work, but we know that here on earth, God's work must truly be our own. And even though we were inaugurating that day, the first Roman Catholic president in our history, that seemed a lot like what my rabbis and guilt-inducing parents had instructed me, which is it's up to us, and that's the life. I mean, Al, God bless him, should live to be 120, and my guess is he might really.
I'm well on the way.
But here he's at a point where he could look back, extraordinary career in the law, rising to the very top of one of the great law firms in America, and then leading the American Jewish Committee, and not just taking it sort of for his ego, but as particularly we saw in Romania, which he just seized that moment. Those three people walked up to him. He could have said, I'll do what I can, and gone back to being busy at Covington and Burling law firm. He changed the world for them and a lot of other Romanian Jews, and then to go on as ambassador. So I think there's that motivator that's part of what we learn, and we've got to begin to, well, we not begin, but do as well as we can in passing that ethic on to future generations of Jewish kids. Beginning, I might add, and I'm sorry I'm talking so long, with teaching them more about Jewish history. I think a lot of them they're Jewish Americans, but they don't really have an understanding of what that means, particularly about Israel. That's a beginning. All right, Al, you're not going to get off that easily.
No, Joe, you're much better than I. Look, what you said, I gave a sermon called Rosh in our synagogue, Joe, after you left. The rabbi wanted me to talk about Jewish ethics. Incidentally, I don't believe in Jewish values, I believe in human values. And I think we as Jews have an obligation to promote human values. But I did talk about ethics, and I made the reference. I apologize for those of you who aren't fluent in Hebrew. Nobody in my family is except my daughter. Somek Novlim Rofech Horim Matiyasurim, which we say is part of the service, every prayer service. Starts out with Chachal Chaim, he who rules life, and then we call upon God to Somech Noflim, to lift up those that are fallen, to heal those who are sick, and to loose the bonds of those who are in prison. And my so-called sermon, Drosh, was, that's our work. It's our work. It's not God's work. It's what we're obligated to do. I undeservedly received an honorary degree from Georgetown University, and I use those words there. It's up to us to do those things. I believe that very deeply, very deeply. To build on that same theme, Joe, and I don't mean to offend anyone here who's Christian, believes in Jesus as the Christ, Messiah. For me, I'm not waiting for the Messiah to come. I have a friend whose mother said the Messiah's already come. He was Harry Truman. But not everybody would agree with that, but he was president when the state of Israel was recognized. I believe we all have to be the Mashiach, have to be the Messiah. It's us to do whatever it is that needs to be done. I'm not waiting for King David to come back. I'm waiting for our children and grandchildren, their children, to improve the lot of mankind. So, Harry, sure, I'm a proud Jew. Sure, there are Jewish values. But let's talk about human values and our obligation as Jews to promote human values.
I think that's already the beginning of a great journey. Amazing. Can we open up the floor? Seems like there are a lot of people. Yes. Would you like to?
2 years ago, I was in Kishinev, in the capital of Moldavia.
Take the mic.
Do I really need it?
I don't know if my glasses are. I can't hear very well.
Okay. 2 years ago, I was in Chisinau, the capital of Moldavia, if I'm not mistaken. Moldavia went at various times, now independent, between Ukraine and Romania. I am wondering, A, what is the interrelationship between Moldavia, Romania, and Ukraine vis-a-vis the war in the eastern Ukraine, and what is the attitude towards either Romania and Ukraine towards Moldavia's independence?
Well, I probably am totally unqualified to answer that question. But like any good lawyer, when the court asks the question, you have to respond. Mark is the honorary consul of Moldova. Mark, stand up.
You really want me to answer this? Do you really want me? Okay, just take the microphone. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I am the honorary consul of the Republic of Moldova in New York. Moldova, it's not Moldovia or Moldavia. Moldova was part of the Soviet Union from 1940 until 1991 when it declared its independence. Before that, it was part of Romania. It was known as Bessarabia, and a long time ago was part of the Russian, part of Russia. The problem for Moldova is similar to the problem that Ukraine is facing, which is the insidious involvement of the Russians in every aspect of the life of Moldova, from its elections to its economy to even a banking crisis in which over $1 billion disappeared from Moldova. Now, to bring it into, and there's a lot to say, this isn't the time to say, but just to bring it into focus with respect to Romania. I think when we were really active in Romania in the 1990s, Moldova was not high on the list of any of the leaders of the government. Today it is, because the Romanians recognize that having a pro-Russian, almost satellite on its borders is something of great significance and something to be avoided. So Romania is very much now supporting Moldova. Unfortunately, I think somewhat belatedly. But I don't know if that's answered your question, but I don't want to take time up on this subject.
Well, thank you.
That's good, Mark. Thank you.
Follow up all Moldova questions. Other questions? Yes.
This question is for both of you gentlemen. It is kind of inspired by my admiration for Senator Lieberman's vision when forming the No Labels PAC and getting problem solvers in Congress, bipartisan problem solvers. Bipartisanship is becoming extinct in Congress. And to get Romania where you got it, Ambassador, took bipartisanship and several administrations. So I'd like to ask the both of you, the way things are now, how is it going to affect foreign policy going forward? We have big challenges with Iran and China and Russia even. How can we bring back bipartisanship and how can we recreate in other venues what you did in Romania?
When Joe left the Congress and Senator McCain died, Senator Graham flipped bipartisanship, sort of left the upper chamber. But Joe, why don't you answer that?
Well, thanks for what you said, Alex. It's a really important question. And, you know, in the period after the Second World War, there was a Republican senator from Michigan named Arthur Vandenberg. He had been, to make a complicated story too simple, something of an isolationist.
Totally.
Vandenberg, before the Second World War, he was a fervent Republican. And yet after the war, as he saw the communist threat emerging and saw President Truman then began to take action, he made a speech in which he essentially said, and the memorable part, I'm not going to quote it exactly, is that partisanship, he had been part of a party he believed in. Partisanship is part of our politics, but it must end at the water's edge. In other words, where we leave the land of U.S. That's it. We're not Republicans or Democrats, liberal or conservative. We're Americans, and we have a national interest. And we have lost that. It's part of the larger problem of partisanship in our politics, and it's without limit. So you could ask the public questions today about foreign policy, and the split on so many of them is unbelievably partisan. And part of it is that they figure out, well, the other party is for A, so I'm not for A, I'm for B. And listen, the way to overcome this, you're very kind to mention No Labels. It's a group that I work with, I'm proud to chair, totally nonpartisan, support center-right, centrist Republicans and center-left Democrats. And really when I say centrist, I don't mean moderate, I mean people in both parties who are prepared to come to the center, negotiate, compromise, get something done, both here at home and for America around the world. That's always the way we've achieved the greatest things we've achieved in our history. We've achieved many great ones. I mean, most of our sense of history today is cinematic. But take another look at Steven Spielberg's Lincoln. Passed the great post-Civil War civil rights constitutional amendments. Wow, did he wheel and deal, compromise, did some things that if today were exposed by the anti-Lincoln cable news network, he'd probably be charged with a crime. But you know, he was offering federal jobs. So we've got, I'm not advocating that, but I want to say that the way this really happens is kind of work No Labels is doing, but really, you in my opinion, represent the majority. It's a minority at the ends of both parties that are dominating our politics unfairly. And if you demand that kind of government, including foreign policy, it can happen again in America. It really has to happen again. There's a wonderful George Bernard Shaw quote, which is, Shaw said that one of the things he liked best about a democracy is that in a democracy, the people get what they deserve. A little bit of a double edge to that one. You deserve better than you're getting, so let's fight for it. Thanks for asking.
A meeting like this is bringing the Jews out of the microphone.
Come on, Jesus.
Okay. We need a meeting like this about the Jews in Romania. We need to mention a name, Jacob. Do you remember Jacob?
What was his name?
Jacob.
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 Yakover?
Yeah. He took from before Ceausescu, from your new days, from Tibu Stoica, he took money, and there is a book written in Washington by Radu Ioanid called The Ransom, and it tells you how much every person that includes us.
I read Ryder's book, yeah. But Jaco wasn't there when I was there.
Yeah, yes, before you. Before Ceausescu, it was Tibu Stoica, and the money was deposited in Switzerland, and then the Jews were freed to go to Vienna, France, or other countries in the West, and the money was collected by the Romanians. So,
Is there a specific question you're asking the ambassador?
no, but we should mention the name Jacob.
Okay.
Okay,
So
really.
let's mention the name.
Really, God
Jacob,
bless
thank you
his
so
name.
much.
And that's
Thank
why
you.
you're in America now. That's how you got out.
He's from Chernovitz.
I
Yeah.
got out, I'm from Chernovitz.
Ah, my family was from Chernovitz.
Okay, so please, just one question before we get to the next one. How many people from Chernovitz here?
Hey, all right.
Good, excellent.
Now
Yes,
part of
the
Ukraine.
gentleman in the back, please.
We have a Chernovitz
There's
caucus.
a gentleman here.
Gentlemen,
Okay, next. Yeah.
my family was allowed to immigrate from Romania in 1959. We came from Pennsylvania, actually, and had been waiting, my parents had been waiting for many years to get permission to leave. It turns out our aunts and uncles did leave on the first wave, which was just after the establishment of the State of Israel. Romania needed money. The Joint actually was paying at that time $50 for each Jew that was left.
This
And there's
is
also,
Jessica. This is in Georgia Days.
I'm sorry, Georgia did. But recently I found, which was actually somewhat disturbing to me, is that by 51 or so, the government of Israel felt overwhelmed by the Jewish Romanian immigration. And there was some discussions in the government at that time, their cabinet meetings, that they should be scaling back and slowing it down. At that time also there was a significant crisis with the Jews in Iraq under threat. And there was a determination made.
Sorry, sir, do you have a question for us?
And the question is this: are you aware of the fact that actually the government of Israel, by design, decided to hold Romanian immigration in the early 50s, and at that point Romania completely shut down the ability of Jews to leave, and that's why we couldn't get out till 1959? That is the question.
Well, okay, the answer is I was not active in 1959. I can't pinpoint the date. I can talk about Israel's actions with regard to Romanian Jewry. I mentioned the Great Synagogue. Israel was conflicted. Israel as a state, Israel as a Jewish nation. It didn't always result in harmonious actions. I had some great difficulties with the government of Israel. But that's a longer subject, and I think it's probably not of general interest, and it's not a very happy story.
Okay.
Sounds
yes.
a little like our shul in Georgetown. It wasn't always harmonious.
Please.
Sir. Long patience.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. It's obvious you referenced NATO as being very important. Currently, the state of NATO is significantly degraded by our administration. Our international policy is in flux and so forth. Do you feel you could do the same things, or our other foreign service leaders could do the same things, referencing America, referencing NATO, referencing the idea of what America is, and using that effectively in policies that we wish to perpetuate?
No. No. It was a unique time. I had all the stars aligned. I didn't align them, but they were aligned, and we were able to do it. I was like the British Raj in Romania. Today, I wouldn't even be recognized. They probably wouldn't even call me Your Excellency. God forbid. So things have changed. My successors didn't have the same opportunity I had. I didn't create the opportunity. I think I took advantage of the opportunity. That is the difference. No, our foreign policy today is very hard to describe with any kind of linear progression. We do have a functioning strategic partnership. We have some 5,000 American service men and women in Romania manning a missile shield, not talked about. It's directed against Iranian missiles, of which there are none. Put a Russian on the name of the missiles. So we're doing things, but it isn't the same. And we've got a long way to go to get back to where we were. We're going to come up with a coherent policy that truly favors and supports the United States interests. And as the senator said, the rabbi said, and the United States values, because they have to be one and the same.
I just add this briefly. After the Soviet Union collapsed, Al's right, it was a special moment. So you had all these countries that had lived under the Soviet yoke, really despising the Russians, looking for a better future. And the way to go was to get into NATO, because that put them in the umbrella of the West. But it took people like Al Moses in Romania. Nobody in any of the other countries in Central and Eastern Europe, to the best of my knowledge, did it as effectively as Al did. And it's part of why there is light in Romania today. He pushed the Romanians to live up to the standards of NATO in the West. It wasn't going to be a free pass. They had to change. And they so desired to get the protection of NATO from the Russians. This was not complicated. that they did, to the best of their ability, change. So leadership matters, and again, this really fine man, great man, gave that leadership in Romania. We need it now.
I agree with Senator Lieberman, totally.
Okay, we have
Except for
time
his references to me, but
Thank
otherwise,
God, I thought you were
he's
gonna
absolutely
say-
right.
for a couple of last questions. Yes, please.
Hi, I was in Romania last May, and because there's almost no Jewish community left, I found that the Jewish community had been pretty much erased. And for example, in Iași, I went to Iași Galați in Bucharest, and other than a synagogue, there's really nothing there. There were over 100 synagogues in Iași in the 1930s. The cemeteries are a wilderness. The records that they have at the synagogue for who's in the cemetery are all falling apart. Is there any not-for-profit that's trying to create some kind of historical restoration of it?
Yeah, I don't hear well. I apologize. I think you mentioned Iași.
Right, well,
Before the war, there were 70 synagogues in Iași. When I went there in 1984 on the chief rabbi's Hanukkah tour, there was one synagogue left, led by a pharmacist named Mr. Kaufman. And I'm going to end on this story because I think you'll like it. To travel with the chief rabbi of Romania in Romania on the 8 days of Hanukkah was as close to heaven as you could ever get. It was nirvana in the Carpathians. An example, we arrived in Iași. We were supposed to be there at 5 o'clock. We arrived at 9 o'clock. No one had left. In walked the chief rabbi in his purple vestments, his bishop-like hat, his Magen David medal that came down to his waist. People stood, tears in their eyes. The rabbi was exhausted. He's a lot younger than I am now, but he was old then in my eyes. So he said, Mr. Moses, you speak. I got up, it was 9 at night. I said, it's a great honor to be here. We have a saying in Jewish lore that from Moses to Moses, there was no one like Moses. From Moshe Rabbeinu to Moses Maimonides, the Rambam, a span of 2,000 years, there's been no one like Moses. But the Jewish people had to wait 2,000 years for the Rambam from Moshe Rabbeinu. But tonight you're only going to wait one more second from Alfred Moses to Rabbi Moses Rosen. And the rabbi shot daggers in my direction, got up and spoke. When he left, he walked out of the synagogue with the choir playing Agam Ne'ilah, walking out ever so slowly as the people cried as their spiritual leader left them. It was a very moving experience. I went to synagogue where the Baal Shem Tov had davened. I went to shtetls, went to places where people only spoke Yiddish. I went to old age homes, Bed Avots, where survivors of Auschwitz were there who were schizophrenic. It was revisiting a world that was fast disappearing. That for me was a great experience, very moving. It seared in my flesh and in my spirit. And with that, it's now 8:30. I'm headed back to whoever the Baal Batim are. Say thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Al,
so
what a
much.
remarkable, story. What a remarkable panel discussion. I want to thank Ambassador Moses for his wonderful insights and knowledge this evening. I want to thank our good friend, the Senator Lieberman here, for all his good work. I want to thank our wonderful partners in this evening's event. I want to thank the Rabbi here and Yeshiva University for partnering with us and for helping us with this evening. I want to thank Shula Bahat and the wonderful, wonderful people at Beit HaFetzot, all of our wonderful friends at Beit HaFetzot for the wonderful things they've done. A couple of points to tell you just before we end. Number one is it wouldn't be a Jewish event if we didn't have food. You go upstairs, there's an elevator over there, there's a staircase over there, you'll find some food, some drink. Please join us, number one. Number two, more importantly perhaps, if you haven't bought Al Moses' book, if you haven't read Al Moses' book, buy it, read it, and then read it again.
I don't get a penny, so it all goes to Brookings, who's my publisher. If you like Brookings, buy the book. If you don't,
But if you like tonight, buy the book, take it home, read it. Ambassador Moses will be upstairs to sign your books for you. Please join us upstairs. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.